I'm Chimomo Mangazi with Business Time on Times Television. It is a magazine program where we bring you business and economic news stories making headlines. In the program today, RBM maintains policy rate at 13.5%. Malawian businessmen of Asian origin decry segregation. We have these and other stories. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome. The Monetary Policy Committee of the Reserve Bank of Malawi has maintained the policy rate, the country's indicative cost of borrowing, at 13.5%. The MPC also maintained Lombard rate at 0.4% above the policy rate and the liquidity reserve requirement at 5% and 3.75% on local and foreign currency deposits, respectively. Darito Kabambe is RBM governor.
In 2019, the economy did very well. You recall that in 2019 we had the general election, but also we had a major setback in form of Cyclone Idai. But despite being an election year, despite Cyclone Idai, our growth was 5.0% up from 4.0% in 2018, meaning that the economy grew strongly in 2019. But equally too, we had exchange rate, although we had a blip immediately after the general election, but we managed to bring back the exchange rate to its level. So we had the stable exchange rate throughout 2019. But also in terms of inflation, it averaged 9.4%. Despite the challenge of maize prices. Remarkably so, non-food inflation came down all the way to around 5 to 6%, down from 9 to 11% in 2018. But we also saw that in terms of private sector credit was growing strongly in 2019. It grew by 21.3% compared to 11.5% in 2018. And also in terms of the financial system as a whole, we had low non-performing levels. They came down from as high as 13.5% industry-wide in 2018 to 4.9% in 2019. So as well as liquidity conditions were good in the banking sector in 2019, just as capitalization of banks was also good in 2019. So overall, 2019 was a fairly good year, despite the setback we had for Cyclone Idai and the elections that we had, which necessitated us to provide more resources, both from the budget as well as in terms of foreign exchange, paying for the costs of the general election. Looking ahead into 2020, our view is that non-food inflation will continue to be anchored between 4 and 5%. Food inflation, we are looking at it that it's really the first 2 to 3 months just before the harvest that would remain elevated. But after the harvest, food inflation is going to go down. So overall, our projection for inflation for 2020 is that it's going to come down from 9.4% average inflation 2019 to around 8.8% in 2020. But similarly too, we project that we'll have a stable exchange rate throughout 2020. We also project that the global market prices will go down from an average of $60.2 per barrel in 2019 to $58 per barrel in 2020. But we also project that the growth, looking at the projections that we have, that the growth is going to be between 5 and 6% in 2020, up from 5% in 2019. We are also seeing that there will be continued private sector credit growth in 2020. We ended with 21% private sector credit growth in 2019, which was up from 11% in 2018. But in 2020, we see that we are likely going to have even stronger growth in private sector credit growth because of the low interest rate regime, which will continue in 2020. But also interesting and excitingly is the fact that the growth in private sector credit now is skewing towards the energy sector, towards mining and quarrying. To us, that's quite exciting news because these two sectors in 2018, they grew by over 100%. They doubled their credit portfolio in the banking system. That's quite exciting because it shows that the economy may be moving towards rebalancing from predominantly credit towards agriculture and wholesale to other sectors like mining, quarrying, as well as the energy sector. So in terms of our forward looking as the Reserve Bank of Malawi, we look at 2020 as again a good year, despite the current risk we have for rising maize prices, which we are taking it as being temporary, that very soon after the harvest, maize prices should start to go down. We are yet to have the first round crop estimates, but our view is that looking at the current crop stand, it points to some good weather conditions that we had beginning with November, December, and indeed part of this January. I think when you look at the southern region and move into the central region and also going into the north, I think when you compare the period when we had this serious dry spell in 2018, but also when you compare with the seriousness of Cyclone Idai in 2019, but also when you look at the level of infestation of fall armyworm in 2018, they may not necessarily compare with the current situation. The current crop stand appear to be better off because the weather this year has been relatively better than the past seasons. So we are optimistic, and we can only pray to God that indeed this should be the case to the end of the harvest. Should that be the case, we may be looking at a good crop in 2020. But our MPC, we hold the first one in January, the next one is in April. We shall review this position if indeed there will be a serious change as we look at the actual crop output from the field. I think when you look at our inflation, you are looking at it two parts, the non-food inflation and the food inflation. On the non-food inflation side, as we are seeing and as we are projecting, the major drivers of non-food inflation are exchange rate, as well as global oil market prices. So for us, in terms of non-food inflation, since we have a stable exchange rate and that global market prices are projected to go down further, we are really seeing that non-food inflation will remain anchored around 4% in 2020. So that should not be an issue or a case for us. Of course, there are also one other factor I think that affect non-food inflation, which is administered prices for water and electricity. Again, for these ones, as you recall, that for electricity they were asking for about a 30% price adjustment in the 3-year period. They already did the 20%. What is remaining, I think, is the 10%, which is going to run in the remaining 2 years. So that may not be big enough to affect non-food inflation. So non-food inflation projection really should be anchored around 4 to 5% in 2020 and going beyond. In terms of food inflation, I think that one is a little bit precarious. It depends really on the weather situation. As we said, if we have a good weather situation this year and a favorable agricultural output, then it will begin to slow down. And that's our projection for now. But really beyond that and going forward, it's how the weather pattern will behave going forward. As long as currently we are looking at almost as high as 19% food inflation, but it's down because it's being brought down by food inflation, non-food inflation. So we'll continue to push very hard on something that we have full control over, which is the non-food inflation. Continue to bring it down, and that hopefully that with good weather, our food inflation will continue to also behave, and that will continue to help us have headline inflation that is much better.
Malawian businessmen of Asian origin have expressed concern for being left out in the empowerment of local businesses to enjoy 60% of government business. We have the whole story in this report.
This comes against the implementation of Section 44 of the Public Procurement and Disposal of Assets Authority Act of 2017 on July 1st, 2019. The section states that a procuring entity from the government shall ensure prioritization of all bids submitted to give preference to 60% indigenous Black Malawians and 40% others for national competitive bidding. During an interface with the Parliamentary Committee on Industry, Trade and Tourism in Blantyre on Wednesday, a group of Malawian business captains of Asian origin lamented the inclusion of the word black in the section. They say inclusion of the word is unfair to the Asian origin business community. They argue that they are doing business in the country and have been doing so for generations, hence the need to be considered Malawians despite their skin color. They further told the committee that they suffer harassment at the hands of officials from various government departments such as the Malawi Revenue Authority, MRA, Malawi Bureau of Standards, MBS, and Immigration for no apparent reason. The group further bemoaned duplicated licenses and fees by city councils, which affect the cost of doing business. A representative of the group who read a prepared statement to the committee, Rafiq Kajat, added that there appears to be double standards being applied for Malawians and non-Malawians.
Well, there appear to be double standards being applied for Malawians and non-Malawians. And then there's a further segregation in terms of indigenous Malawians and non-indigenous Malawians. And there's all kinds of limitations that apply if you are deemed to be a non-indigenous Malawian. Now, as a person who has fought for human rights and for democracy in this country, my family came here in 1870, 150 years ago. My grandfather was born here, my mother was born here, I was born here. I was born at Queens in 1955. Now, when you tell me what is the difference between you and me, we went to the same schools. You know, I love my Nsima, and I must have it at least once a week, at least. So, really, what we're trying to point out is that these lines of separation are actually false, and they do not work to the benefit of the country. Instead, they work against it. So, as a well-meaning Malawian patriot, I'm saying that let us be colorblind, and let's look at the person's merit rather than color when we decide who should do what and how they should do it. On corruption, I would tell you this. I'm a very honest person. It takes two to tango. And where there is a corrupter and the receiver of the corruption. And unfortunately, what we tend to concentrate on is one side of the coin. And you hear this talk about Mwenye this, Mwenye that, and grabbing land, etc. You find that there's a lot of sensationalization when it comes to an Asian. But land grabbing has been going on for decades. I could give you many cases.
Chairperson of the committee, Simplex Banda, said the interface is a starting point of soliciting views on how the environment can be improved to enhance business operations and grow the economy. Q in Banda. Among other things, the meeting discussed continued power outages affecting production, the welfare of employees in businesses and companies owned by the Asian community, and unrealistic taxes which burden production, let alone the end consumer.
I think the first step is we are going to analyze all the issues that have been raised by them and look at how best we can take them forward. Obviously, we'll be engaging some of the key stakeholders mentioned when we were actually having this interface. For your information, we are actually meeting MRA tomorrow and other stakeholders like Malawi Bureau of Standards. We have already met Reserve Bank of Malawi yesterday, and then we will also be meeting Bankers Association of Malawi. Because if you look at the series of issues that have come out of this meeting today, some legal and policy-related issues, MRA related. Others are also relating to, yes, taxation, but also issues to do with the smuggling. So they also touch immigration. So I would say that we continue engaging key stakeholders. But as to the action point, that will actually involve the communities that we've met today, is that we are going to organize an interface between the Asian community and the relevant key stakeholders. The aim was, one, to appreciate the achievements the Asian community are making in Malawi, but also the challenges that they are experiencing, but also to seek their views and feedbacks on some of the reforms in terms of the legal instruments that they feel should be met. You know, we are a committee of parliament on industry, trade and tourism. So it is within our mandate to meet our key stakeholders as we prepare to have, a report presented in Parliament during the budget review session that will be held sometime in February. Yes, in creating of conducive environment for business people in Malawi, but also facilitation of government policies like the Buy Malawi strategy. We can only achieve this and boost our economy if we take on board each and every stakeholder. We listen to them, we hear what their views are, take them on board, but also link their issues to relevant ministries. So you will see that our committee is a catalyst between the key stakeholders and government agencies.
Technology has proven to be beneficial in several quarters of life. Communication and trade are borderless. Information is also now at your fingertips. But how has technology impacted Malawian music? Sharon Chirwa finds out.
Malawi may not immediately spring to mind when it comes to African music. But the country is fast developing a buzzing music scene. For many years, Malawian musicians largely depended on studios like this one at state-owned Malawi Broadcasting Corporation to record their music. But thanks to advances in technology, computer-based digital recording studios have sprung up in many towns and cities.
I have artists that come and record, but then mostly I also do corporate stuff, like for the media, like advertising, you know. So I'm also into video editing and stuff like that. So yeah, that really brings money, and because if you're dealing with corporates, it's a whole different issue. And yeah, I also do like theme songs for companies and stuff like that, so that's good money as well. Yeah.
Grew up thinking one day things will get better. I ended up queuing for sugar.
Some of Malawi's musicians are now finding fame across the country's borders.
Shopping on our billions, shopping on our taxes. Ziwa muzika kondwa, amalonda Africa. And you can't run away, you can't run away.
Faith Musa is one of them. He's played to thousands at big festivals like England's Glastonbury. The one-man band star broke away from a family band and is shining even brighter. In Malawi, Faith pulls quite the crowd even when the show is not his, performing, entertaining, and in turn making the kwacha, which is the local currency. But are musicians like Faith really making enough money?
Well, I can say yes and no, because I think we're moving from a time when people could not really make a living out of music to a time when people are able to make a living out of music. But at the same time, there are people who are not able to make a living out of music. So it's a question of which artists, what are they actually doing? But with time, I feel like we're going towards the positive direction.
How has technology assisted your music?
Over the past few years, I decided to develop a one-man band. And the one Band pretty much uses a gadget called a loop station. So I'm able to produce music, to make big sound using just one gadget, several instruments connected to it, and able to record myself, re-record, repeat it on stage. So I'm able to do that because of technology. Secondly, I'm able to take sounds that I could not have managed to carry abroad. For example, drum sounds, huge vocals. I loop them, sample them, put them in my machine, and I can play everywhere I want.
This is Malawi's finest, of course, the biggest radio station.
Foreign music still dominates Malawi's airwaves, but local artists are now benefiting more as radio DJs are now playing considerable local content.
And this is a real woman from Cebu Nyanyana.
Club DJs are also playing Malawian music.
3 or 5 years ago, you would go to Malawian clubs and not expect to hear any Malawian music. Now DJs like him are embracing the Malawian sound and gracing all club goers with the Malawian sound, giving them a chance to dance and jive it out just like this.
Piracy continues to hurt both emerging and established musicians. In recent years, the sales of CDs has also declined. Music is often stored on USB sticks and sold by unauthorized vendors. Sharing of music on social media is also rampant. The Copyright Society of Malawi was established in 1992 to promote and protect creativity. So what exactly is the organization doing to curb piracy in the digital era?
The coming in of technology has exacerbated the problem of piracy. But then the law has also come in to check that by providing for devices that would help fight piracy on an online environment. And it makes it criminal if somebody tries to circumvent those devices in order to access or copy works without authorization. The musicians are being used to provide content. So you have companies that have come up that are into content aggregation. You have telcos that are providing various services that have music as a component. You have things like ringtones, ringback tunes, all that provide money.
Technology has changed the music scene here in Malawi. And many musicians now realize they need to adapt to the digital era if they are to stay relevant.
Remember, this is Business Time on Times with me, Chimomo Mangazi. It is a magazine program where we bring you major business and economic news stories making headlines. And as we proceed with the program, let's now have a look at how the Malawi Kwacha is faring against major trading currencies on the foreign exchange market. Come back. HL Group Operations Executive Davis Manyenje has called upon the corporate world to engage in corporate social responsibility. Manyenje made the call when the organization, together with agricultural trading company ATC, handed over Terminator chemical used to kill insects such as mosquitoes and bed bugs at Kamuzu Central Hospital on Thursday. Manyenje explains.
This is where our mothers are giving birth to newborn babies, and this is a point at which they need to be very much protected from mosquitoes and malaria, especially for the young ones that have just been born. We need to give them a good start to life, and we thought, as part of our corporate social responsibility, we have two of our subsidiaries, HL Chemicals Limited, HL Chemicals and Steel Limited, which manufactures Terminator, which is the chemical that we're using in spraying the premises to deal away with vectors such as mosquitoes, bedbugs, cockroaches, and have a hassle-free environment.
KCH Public Relations Officer is Chianjano Kazombo.
It's a big problem because this is a referral hospital. We get patients from the northern region, the central region, from district hospitals. So they are always bringing bed bags from home and they are going, some are coming back. So it's a big problem. And this donation from the Terminator from HL Group will greatly assist us because this chemical, when they spray, it takes about 4 to 6 months still working. So this is going to help us in the wards.
Well, with that story, we've also come to the end of today's edition of Business Time here on Times. It is a magazine program where we bring you major business and economic news stories making headlines in the country. On behalf of the entire production team, I'm Chimomo Mangazi. But always remember, if it doesn't make money, it doesn't make sense. Bye for now.